but it's also, I feel like I have such an innate love for everybody and helping others, but I have to keep that in check, right? Because I've still got to make sure I'm taking care of myself.
Hey, hello, Lisa.
Hello. So great to meet you.
I know. We are going to rock and roll today. I'm excited to have you on. You are an expert in all things women's health, and my audience is, although we have men behind the scenes, and I love it when men listen too. I'm pro men as well, even though the brand is the Unstoppable Woman. The majority of our listeners are women in business, women entrepreneurs. They go hard. And I think you're going to have a lot of helpful information for them in terms of how to really, the thing I want to dive into is energy, because so many of my clients, I read between the lines a little bit, but they say things like, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't focus, I'm tired. And some of them are saying things to me before they become clients around like, I'm afraid of burning out. So they have some experience around that. So let's just dive in right there. Yes. What is your take on that?
Oh my gosh. I think it's so true, because here's the reality. As women, I think it's hardwired in us, right? Like, I'm not a mom, but I think there's probably a lot of women that are listening that are moms. And even if we're not mothers, we still give to everybody else first, right? I just think that's something that's hardwired in us, to nurture everyone else. And so that's my biggest thing, ladies, is that we've got to be able to nurture ourselves, take care of ourselves, because when all of a sudden we've given to everybody else and we are like sitting on the kitchen floor, sitting there saying, what in the world happened? Like, I'm exhausted. I am so fatigued. I'm overweight. I'm like, my health is gone. Like, I don't even know what's happening right now. And like, I've been taking care of kiddos or taking care of my business or doing whatever.
Wait a second. So is that your experience? Have you gone through that? Have you had the like bathroom floor, kitchen floor? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So talk to us about that. Let's make it real.
Yeah. For me, so here's the reality. Like, I'm a chiropractor, I'm a naturopath. So I'm very much holistic, know my stuff. And so for me, and this is, I guess I'm going to deep dive into a whole nother, like into this, because I think every woman can relate, and we've got to be okay with ourselves first. Right. So for me, I was always looking for outside approval. Like, I was never skinny enough for the guys. I was never pretty enough. It was always whatever it was. And so I was doing all of these great things. Like, I was eating paleo before paleo was ever a term, right? I was eating like a low fat paleo. So that was keto, even. That's a big buzzword now. I was doing CrossFit 5 days a week, and I was struggling with my weight, right? And I wasn't eating sugar. And so when I would sit there and talk to my patients about, this is how we need to be eating for health and all of that, I felt like I was being judged by them, that they would like look at me and say, really, Dr. Lisa, like, you're fat, you don't eat sugar. But it was like, no, I really don't. And I can't figure out why my body's not changing. Right. So it was a really well-intentioned, well-meaning friend when we were at a seminar, and she looks at me, she's like, here's the deal, Lisa. Like, she's a chiropractor too, like very knowledgeable. She's like, here's the deal. What's wrong with you? There's something wrong with your body. She goes, I see how you eat. I see how you work out. You should be a size 2. So obviously there's something wrong. So that's the worst thing to hear. Like, when all of a sudden all your confirmation, because ladies, come on, we all are like, what's wrong with me? Right? Like, we can't,
you're like, oh my God, like, there is something wrong with me.
There's something wrong with me. They just told me that. So I did like the worst thing possible and basically starved myself for months. But I lost weight.
So wait a second. So your response, let's just break this down. Your colleague says, Hey, Lisa, I'm concerned. This
like,
isn't working.
There's something wrong with you. Like, I see how hard you work out. You should be really skinny. And I'm like,
and instead of going into investigation, you went into, I'm going to go harder.
Right.
I want to call that out. Okay. Because I think this happens in business. It happens in health. It happens in relationships. I'm going to do the thing that's not working right now harder and hope that's going right. And I know for me that was a thing. Like, before I had my breakthrough, when I really broke through financially, I had multiple strategies. I wasn't, only this, but my one main strategy was go harder, work harder. Like, if I'm going to outwork everyone else. I'm going to just be that willpower woman. And at some point it's unsustainable. There is a place for, working out in your case, or hard work, or focusing on your diet, or whatever it is. But it gets to be like, if you're not getting the results that you want, you got to look at the causes. What are you putting in there?
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing, like you just said it, like, just go harder. Isn't it just like, I feel like it's such a male dominated thing, but like I'm in a male dominated profession, right? Like I am the first female to ever, I'm president of our association here in the state, first female ever. Like I sit with a bunch of men. Like, so of course, like I went to school with a bunch of men. Like, maybe that's just, this is what it is. Like, so that was what I did then. I did a really ridiculous, well, I did a bunch of intermittent fasting. I know that's a huge buzzword now, but back then it was just the beginning. And I followed all the guys. And again, I love men.
And it's so attractive. Like here's the thing. I love that male energy. I love, like, I'll listen to a podcast and it's go hard. And I get all amped up and I get all motivated and excited. And I can do that for a period of time. And then I can't. And I think so what is your take? A lot of people, myself included, talk a lot about sort of masculine energy and feminine energy. And were you able to change your approach so that you were coming at it not from I need no structure, but from a different kind of energy?
I think over the course of the last 5 years, it's so much of a, Lisa, you need to nurture yourself.
Yeah.
You need to take care of yourself. And so I think that's where I was coming from, of trying to take care of everybody else, like taking care of all of my patients, taking care of my business, nurturing, that my business is my baby. Right. And it was like, all right, self-care 101, because I was at the point where it wasn't on the kitchen floor, but I literally was sitting I lost weight. I did a bunch
by starving yourself.
Yeah. With strict intermittent fasting, which all the guys are like, this is great. And then there were a few of us women that were like, I don't think this is right. Like, we're getting something all messed up. And what it is, we can deep dive into that later if you want, but it's our hormones. Our hormones are different 30 days out of the month. Right. And so the fact is, like, men
only 30 days out of the month. Right.
So for me, like, I did that. And I remember, like, being at, seminars, and these guys all of a sudden they're like, man, Lisa, you're so sexy now. Like, what? I'm like, oh, really? I'm sexy now. Because in the meanwhile, what had happened, my kitchen floor crying episode was actually at my hairstylist. She was cutting my hair. And when I walked in first, she's like, I don't know what you're doing, but you need to stop because you're not looking good, Lisa. She's like, I know you've lost the weight, but you're not looking good. And then all of a sudden, and I can't believe I'm going to share this, but I will. I'm sitting in the hairstylist chair and she's like, Lisa, I need to show you something. I'm like, what? Do I have a bald spot on my head? She goes, I need to show you something. And she turned me around and, like, seriously, my stomach sinks. I was losing chunks of hair. Like, I had tanked my health.
Yeah.
So here, all of a sudden, the guys are like, oh, you're so sexy, Lisa. And I'm sitting here thinking, holy smoke. So as I'm in a panic attack at my hair salon, and I'm in a town of 5,000 people. I'm a holistic health person.
Right. So there's even that layer to it. It's not like I did that, but I'm not the expert around health. Right.
And now all of a sudden I created this because I was so, like, set up on what the guys wanted, that I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't sexy enough. I wasn't whatever it was. And I just had to be okay with myself. So here's my hair salon, or my stylist is like, I'm going to call the ambulance on you. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, I'm getting through this. Like, get me an orange. Let me bring up my blood sugar. Like, I'll be fine. But I even laugh about it now. Like, she knows, like, it was the scariest situation for me. And that's when I was like, I've created a massive storm. Like, this is horrible.
So how did you get out of that?
Oh my God. I started eating. No.
Which is good. We need sustenance.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we need sustenance on a lot of different levels, like food sustenance, love sustenance, connection, intimacy, all of that.
It was. And so it was the fact, like, I was traveling nonstop at that point. I was gone every single weekend on an airplane. So I was adrenal fatigue. I was burned out. Like, when you say burnout, I was there. And so that was me. I was the perfect storm. I had a leaky gut. I had all sorts of stuff. And so me doing this very strict intermittent fasting, low calorie, it was not what my body needed at all. Not what any of our bodies need. So for me, I deep dive. Like, I realized what I had done, everything I was following, nothing that my gut was telling me to do, right? That little innate voice. I went against it. So don't, but I started eating a lot more fat. So I'm a huge fan of keto, a good quality fats. Started doing that and just started doing all of my different nutritional supplements and taking care of myself. I literally had to stop burning the candle from both ends. So that was like, all right, focus in on your sleep, focus in on all of this stuff.
So talk to me about that, because a lot of women have a challenge with that. They're running their own business. Everything's on their shoulder. They might be the breadwinner in for their family. A lot of women these days are the ones that are bringing in, the primary income, sometimes even the man staying home, taking care of the kids. And you say to them, you actually need to work a little less and balance your life. And I like the word harmonize better, but
yes.
like you need more sleep, and people will nod their head on that, but I know that underneath it, they're going, and because they tell me, how the hell am I going to actually run my business and pull back like you're sharing with me?
Yeah.
So how do you speak to that? What would you say to that?
I am a huge fan of baby steps, and I even in health transitions and all of that stuff. And Tony Robbins, I steal this line from him all the time, right? But he is the one, I think it was at UPW where he, so yeah, as soon as I said that, I was like, yeah, unleash the power within. But he used the analogy of when we think of our kids, when they're learning to walk, they're crawling and they try to walk and they fall and they fall and they stand back up and they fall and they stand back up and they fall. And we never look and say, hey, my kid's just not going to be a crawler or not going to be a walker. He's just going to crawl the rest of his life. We never give up on our children, but so often we give up on ourselves. Like, hey, healthy living's too hard for me. Sleeping a lot, like this is just whatever it is, too much. We need to do baby steps. So it is ladies, when you are burned out and you're like, but how do I add this in? Just start with a small step. If you can just start drawing boundaries of this is work time, this is family time, right? And then making sure and making that commitment of getting to bed at a certain time. Because what I don't think people realize, looking at from the health perspective, so many things happen when we sleep, right? It's our detoxification happens. We heal when we sleep. Think of how tired we get when we're sick. There's a reason, because we are healing. And so we need to have that quality sleep, just our hormone balancing, all sorts of stuff. So that way, when we're 60, 70, 80 years old, we're not like completely fried and a wreck.
So, I've worked with several clients, many clients, but two pop into my head immediately. One just recently, actually, who had sleep issues. And we came at it from a mindset perspective. Like one client recently, I was digging into why she wasn't sleeping well. And I just asked her, what's actually happening? She's like, I'm waking up every hour thinking about work and what needs to be done. And I asked the question, it seemed like a simple question to me, but it blew her mind and it changed things for her, which I was very pleased about, which was, what does your subconscious think is going to get done by you waking up every hour? Like, ask it that logic question. And when she did, she started sleeping better.
Isn't that great? Yes.
And like, she stopped waking up because she actually had that little mini conversation with her subconscious.
Yeah.
And she was able to her subconscious was no longer thinking that was the appropriate strategy for saving her from certain death, right? Like, because she was in panic about how she was growing her business. So I come at it from this mindset perspective, but I'm sure you have some, in addition to mindset, maybe it's all mindset, but I'm assuming that you also have some supplements and health, more sort of straight up health strategies.
So here's the deal. Let's talk about, like, when you talk about burnout, typically what that is the adrenals. The adrenals sit on top of the kidneys. They control our energy. And so what happens is we go. And so those adrenals they get fatigued at this point. And so if the adrenals go, then we start seeing thyroid issues, which I feel like probably every woman listening is like, oh yeah, I've had my thyroid check, right? Like we all know that. So I love magnesium. So magnesium is a great supplement to take before bed, just that is going to help relax. That's going to help you sleep really good. Another great way, I am a huge fan of like Epsom salt baths. So Epsom salt is very high in magnesium, but that's also just a relaxation thing. So I know if you've got toddlers at home, you're like, how in the world will I ever find time to do this myself? So maybe the magnesium supplements would be good.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I love essential oils too, just because of the there's so many therapeutic benefits to actual essential oils, not like the fragrance chemical oils, but the ones that are actually coming from plants. Love them. So
Okay, so talk
lavender,
to us
yeah.
about that. Yeah, which ones? You
Oh,
just started to go
lavender and
there.
cedarwood are especially so
Oh,
good at night. And so cedarwood, a lot of my clients will be like, it smells like cat pee. I'm like, it really doesn't. It smells like cedar. Like I think of it smells like a sauna, but I also don't have cats, but we'll blend it with a little bit of lavender. So it literally will help people fall asleep. But again, if women are going through menopause or if they're perimenopausal, they might be having issues sleeping as well because it's a hormonal thing. And so we really, or it could even be a gut imbalance. You know, I look a lot with clients on parasites and mold and that type of stuff too.
yeah.
So it's a multifaceted approach, but I love going with the baby steps. Let's look at, like you just said, let's prep the subconscious mind because that thing is powerful.
It
So
certainly is. Yeah. So would you use the same essential oils during the day, or do you use different essential
not
oils?
during the day because you'll put yourself to sleep.
Okay. Well,
Well,
what would
lavender is
you
nice and relaxing, but for sure, cedarwood, what that does, because people will hear about taking melatonin supplements.
Hmm.
And again, coming from a chiropractic perspective, I don't like giving the body something that it makes on its own, because then you're telling your body like, hey, I got this, don't worry about making it. So cedarwood stimulates melatonin production. So I like that to tell my body, hey, make some melatonin that's going to allow me to sleep. That'll be nice.
So interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so don't take cedarwood during the day.
Yeah.
Anything that if someone has got an overact, like they're in full blown like I'm in the rat race, I'm like treading water, like any essential oil that you would recommend for just helping them chill.
Well, lavender would be nice just to help
Okay.
chill. And then for those people that are like trying to if you're getting those afternoon slumps, those energy slumps, and you're like, I've got to get through my afternoon, I got to power through this, I really like peppermint for that because that will be nice and uplifting. And then also the big thing, I focus a lot on diet. Like if we're getting that energy crash in the afternoon, start figuring out how much sugar and carbohydrates we're eating and cut those out at lunchtime, because that's that afternoon, blood sugar crash.
Oh, good stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So where does the energy actually come from? Like from a health perspective, like
From our like physical energy, or is it all energy all kind of
well,
transmuted?
let's answer that from all I mean, I have the metaphysical
Yeah.
answer to that,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Like all the energy that ever was and ever will be is here and it's here now, and there's
right.
it's just changing form.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that what we're doing with our bodies?
Absolutely. And that's where I think a lot of our energy, the food that we're eating. So, what is the quality of our food that we're eating?
Mm-hmm.
I always teach our patients the fact is, everything that we are, like every single cell regenerates in our body, right? Our stomach cells regenerate every couple of days, like our liver regenerates every 7 years. So, like, you are literally a brand new person 7 years from now. And so, it's based upon that quality of food and the nutrition that you put into your body now and where you are 7 years from now, right? So let's get good quality food for those nutrients, because that's how, and it's not just what we eat, it's how well are we digesting them, because so many people have such digestive issues now
Poor
as well.
digestion. Yeah. How much of
Yes.
that comes from stress?
Oh, so much of it, right? But and to think of, it's not just the typical stress of what we think of, right? Like think of what we've been through over the course of the last year and a half. Like there's so many more additional stressors now. People are on computers nonstop. We have the blue light from all of our computer screens and our iPads and our iPhones and all of this stuff. Like, and then we have the stressor of like wearing a mask. And now all of a sudden that's something different that our bodies have never had to deal with. So we're getting stress from all different areas. And I always use the analogy of it might be, I'm a huge fan. You probably are too. I do not like people watching the news, right? Like I don't want, there's so much negative stuff on the news. And the example I use is like, I'm outside of Detroit. So here's the reality. If I were watching the 11 o'clock news every night before I went to bed, now all of a sudden I've just filled my mind with all this stuff, right? So in it, I know that it was whatever events happened in Detroit, but my body reacts to it innately. Like my body thinks I'm running from a lion or a tiger or a bear.
Mhm.
And so now all of a sudden, all this other stuff is happening, a whole bunch of hormonal cascade in the body. So,
And it's affecting your sleep, which is
yes.
then a double whammy, right?
This
because you're not allowed.
constant
Yeah.
horrible cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. You
So,
can't rejuvenate.
oh my gosh, no. So we need to make sure that we're doing all of those right things because rejuvenation is so important.
Yeah. So what do you do when you don't get good sleep? Like you've done all the things, right? You're not watching the news. You got your cedarwood, you got your lavender, you're taking your magnesium, you're doing all the self-care right things, and you wake up and you had a nightmare, or you didn't sleep well for some reason. The dog or the cat was up, or the kids were up, or what is your go-to way of attending to yourself the next day when you're wiped?
Yeah. No, I have done that. I've just went through and I had a very just lots of stress just within. I lost a good friend in December, right? So for all people that are like, yeah, I haven't been sleeping, I was like, I'm right there with you. And then I have this stupid Aura ring that tracks everything. So then it only tells me in the morning that I didn't sleep well. I'm like, well,
wait a second, go back. I don't know about this Aura ring. You got to tell me about this
so
Aura
what
ring.
it's a ring that's tracking Aura as an OURA, but it tracks sleep patterns. It does heart rate variability. It does all of my exercise, my movement, gives me a readiness score every morning. So I do love that. And so, but it is in the morning, I kind of sync it on up and it shows me, and it's like, well, you slept X amount of hours and how many hours of deep sleep and REM sleep versus, light sleep. So I have been that. And so I understand because I've been there. I was definitely there. I would get up and I'd use my oils and I'd still watch that clock and my mind was racing on thinking of everything. Right. You have to be okay with it. Like you have to come to acceptance of like, this is where it is. And I just would power through in the morning, make sure you have really good quality protein. I don't want to do a lot of sugar throughout those days because you're going to get your highs and lows of a roller coaster, but focusing on that. We don't want to really string ourselves out on caffeine, but I am that person. I have really, coffee is my vice. I allow myself all organic, really great coffee. So I do have that, my cup of coffee in the morning, but I don't do sugar or anything else. So I allow myself my good coffee. It's my time.
The thing that works for me, if I'm cognizant and aware, which is not, it usually takes me a little while to get there, it is not to be in resistance to it. Like what we resist persists. So if I feel tired, let's say I didn't wake up feeling rested, which doesn't happen that often. I'm a good sleeper, but it does happen. And then I push against it and I'm like anxious because of it or resistant to the feeling of exhaustion, it actually makes it worse. Mm-hmm. And so I instead just kind of sink into it and I don't force it. I went off coffee for a little while and my body loved it, but my mind and my taste buds did not. So I'm back on coffee.
I mean, again, like,
and it's so yummy, but I've been doing it. So what's your take on this? I've been doing it with, what's his name? The bulletproof.
Asprey.
Yeah. His Instamix. Because it's just easy. What do you think of that? As it seems
I do like that. I'm that person.
Yeah.
I kind of like, because this is my little thing. If you ever listen to my podcast of that type of stuff, but I'm a huge fan of keto, right? So is Dave. I have a fat bomb on my hips though, so I don't add in a lot of extra fat. So I do my coffee black. I do go through phases. Sometimes I will do my extra butter and the, MCT oil in my coffee. But a lot of times if I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to allow my body to tap into its fat stores to get rid of them. So it is and that's where I find a lot of people, if they're switching into keto, will do that. And all of a sudden they have a 600 calorie, breakfast every morning of their coffee. And the instant mix is not that much because I know, because it's a couple.
Yeah, but I'm having two.
Oh, okay.
As I wink. So let's talk keto a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then I have other questions about your biz.
Okay.
So keto, people love it. I've watched all the videos, right? Everyone's like, go crazy, not go crazy. They're supportive of it. It's working for them. When I tried to do keto and I liked the concept of it, it did not at all work for me. And I gave it a good 2-month shot. Oh, and I think I confused things. I had done something similar to carnivore. It wasn't completely carnivore.
Oh, I love carnivore.
And my body loved it. And I wasn't strict about it, but I was eating mostly meat, these parm crisps that I just ordered them on Amazon by like the week, like the 30 packs a week kind of thing. And that's an exaggeration, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
And I basically lived on ground beef, parm snacks, and cashew nuts. And at some point, I mean, I was burning fat like crazy, and I was really letting go of weight fairly easily, and I wasn't hungry, but I spooked myself because I was like, is this healthy? This does not seem like a well balanced, what about the fruits? What about the vegetables? Yeah. And I think I was a little bit, it's hard to go back that far and really remember, but I think my energy was pretty good when I was doing that. When I moved out of the sort of strict version of it. And by the way, the strict version of it was not a willpower thing. I was so busy, I streamlined my eating. Yeah. So that I just didn't have to make decisions.
It wasn't a decision. I agree. Right? I do the same thing.
Okay. So would you recommend going back to that? Is it going to hurt me?
I love,
what do you think?
So I've been a keto fan for a while, right? Like I said, I was low carb, paleo. And so especially when I started teaching my patients about keto, they're like, oh, now you're keto. And I was like, but the fact is, had I been telling them in the early 2000s, I want you to do keto, they would have been like, oh, that's Atkins. So it's funny how the word, so we were always like, we're going to do a low carb paleo plan, and not realizing that they were doing keto. I love the fact of being in ketosis. I love all of the benefits for the brain. I love the benefits for the immune system, on inflammation. There's all sorts of stuff. I always tell people just type in ketosis and blah, 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 whatever it is that they want to find over on their search engine, and they can find all sorts of stuff, right? So I'm a huge fan of that. Several years back, I started seeing people doing carnivore, and I was like, that cannot be healthy, right? Like the same thought where you just said, like, what about fruits and vegetables? And in my head, I'm like, that's going to be too acidic. You're only getting stuff from meat. And I just started digging again. I just want to learn more. And so there were a couple different podcasts that I saw, and this is when my aha went off, was that, animals, when they're under attack, they run away, right? So hunters, gatherers, going back to like our caveman ancestor days. If an animal was under attack, they left. They had that opportunity to leave. Plants, nuts, seeds, they can't run away. So they secrete other like lectins.
This is the toxin thing. Okay.
Yes.
I'm following you.
So they secrete this so they're not, to protect themselves from being eaten. And that's typically the stuff that people are sensitive to. So that was my aha. When I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm going to try carnivore for a bit. So I went hardcore for several weeks, and I loved it, right? Like it was amazing. And for me, it was funny because my weight didn't shift, but I could tell I was increasing muscle mass. And so of course, muscle weighs more than fat. So my weight on the scale wasn't shifting, but I could tell my body was shifting, composition. So I did that. And then it's just funny just how life happens. You kind of fall away from it. So I'm pretty much more keto. However, especially for women, I am that one that advocate that we need to knock ourselves out of ketosis, again, because of our hormones. So whether it's 2 days out of the week to knock yourself out of ketosis, or 1 week out of the month, I always tell ladies, like, pay attention, because you are going to notice there's a certain time period that you crave carbohydrates. Typically, most of us, it's during our period. Sometimes it's the week before. Occasionally, some people really crave carbs during ovulation. And that's your body's innate way of saying, hey, I need a little bit more carbohydrates.
So you don't have, like, as the doctor, mm-hmm. Dr. Lisa, yeah. You don't think removing fruits and vegetables from the diet and grains, because carnivore would be basically, if anyone,
grains out of the diet for sure.
Yeah. So for anyone who's not familiar with carnivore is basically eating meat and meat products. So dairy is part of it as well.
Yeah. I'm not a huge dairy fan, but yeah. So like when I did carnivore, I was literally doing red meat.
Yeah.
Like I'd have a steak every night.
So do you think, from your perspective, long-term, that's viable?
Viable is another word, right? Because it's hard living that way in typical life of what, like being out in the real world, that's difficult.
Yeah.
I am a fan of doing it and then just seeing how your body is. It's a great way to test food allergies. it's a phenomenal way to test food allergies. You're taking everything out and then slowly incorporating them back, and then you see how your body responds. Fabulous way to test that way, because I think a lot of times there's a lot more food sensitivities to things than what people even realize. So I like it. It's hard for people to follow. You have to have willpower to follow that.
Yeah,
right.
You have to be committed to it for sure. And I just kind of fell into it and then I fell out of it. So there you go.
Yeah. And it's short term, right? Like it's fine to do short term. I think every single person is different. We've got to figure out what works right for us, right? Like I've got some of my friends right now that are going crazy high carbs, as in like 200 grams of carbs each day, which to me is crazy. But they're thriving on it. So it's different for every person. We just got to figure out how it is. And when they're eating these carbohydrates, it's like good quality carbs. It's not, potato chips and whatever. Doritos.
I have to say potato chips are my like guilty pleasure. Like totally potato chips and popcorn. Okay. There you go. You've heard it. I am not perfect. Look at that. What about women of different ages? So like we have women, I would say, we have women in their 20s and 30s listening to the podcast, and then later in years as well, but there's a good majority in their 40s and 50s. Is there a different, do you look at different things when you're working with women of different ages? I mean, obviously hormones play.
Right. And especially like the 40s to 50s when we're perimenopausal. Yeah. Like, let's look at it. And sometimes we still, and regardless, even if my women are menopausal, if they're like late 50s and they haven't, had a period for however long, like your body still is following a certain rhythm. And so I still give them a week to knock themselves out of ketosis, right? If they're following that. So yeah, I do look at that. And sometimes it is, like I said, sometimes with perimenopausal women, we might need a little more carbohydrates. It might just be dependent also, like, what's your activity level like? Are you just sitting behind a computer screen all day long, or are you out there CrossFitting 5 days a week? Because it's going to be different for those people too.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Shifting gears here. I was checking out your Instagram before I got on here. I know.
My Instagram is not good. Yeah.
No, no worries. Mine isn't particularly fabulous right now either. So all that being said, there was a post, I don't know how long ago it was, but you were holding the Introverts United mug.
Oh God. Yeah.
And I, of course, beeline to that. And you had mentioned being at a event and being an introvert. So many people wouldn't recognize this in me because I'm on this podcast and I present very confidently. And I love speaking on stages and all of this, but I'm a hermit. I love my little introverted world. So I wanted to dive into that and talk about how you have integrated being an introvert with building your business.
Oh,
you're like, why are you asking me this?
I look because I do a podcast too, and this one I'm like, oh, this is only audio. They can't see me like holding my head right now. So I was that girl that never spoke until her junior year of high school, right? Like, I mean, I say that and people are like, you didn't really talk. I'm like, well, no, I just was so shy. I didn't talk. So quick story. And this is how I've had to go into my business. So finally, junior and senior year in high school is when I realized like, oh my gosh, this is actually cool. I can have friends. I can talk. Like, this is great. Went away to college, went right back into my shell. And it took me 2 more years to get out of my shell. So I remember when I physically moved from Michigan to Iowa to go to grad school, I sat there after my parents had moved me out there and they left. And I'm like, I'm in a whole nother state right now. And I don't know a single soul. And it's like 3 days before school starts. And I have no idea. And I remember in my mind thinking, all right, you can go right back into your shell and lose out on the next 2 years of your life, or you can actually like be uncomfortable, be comfortable being uncomfortable. And so that's it. And people always laugh. And you'll get this. Is this not the worst though? When people are like, oh, there's no way you're an introvert. I hate that. Because I'm like, you have no idea how hard it is for me to be talking to you right now. Right. Like, but these people that are always like, oh, there's no way you're an introvert. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm an extroverted introvert. I've forced myself to be this way. Like, that's the reality of what it is. Being up on stage. Yeah. My gut goes all crazy beforehand. I'm shaking, but we go out there and realize that we're playing bigger to help others. And I think that's the same thing. I sit down at my desk behind my desk with a new patient. I hate that interaction. I hate that first interaction with people, but I also realize that if I don't sit there and talk with them, their life is never going to get better. And they've come to me for help. It's that constant reminder of we've got to play bigger. And man, over the course of the last year of lockdown, at first I was like that person on the go, go, go. And then all of a sudden to be forced home, I realized several months in, I'm like, yeah, I got to check myself. I could just sit here forever. Right? Like got into my hermit, got into my introverted side. I was like, I'm okay with this. I am never leaving my house again. And it's like, no, Lisa, like you got to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting. Like the one-on-one with the clients is challenging for you too. It's not just the big groups.
Yeah, for sure. It's also even like, I think the person that introduced us for this podcast, right? Like I remember meeting him at Mastermind and was like, I didn't talk to anybody at that Mastermind. I just sat there by myself. Like, how do you meet people if you're like, I'm always like, Lisa, come on. Like you paid big money to be here for this Mastermind. Get out there and connect with people.
Yeah. When I go to events that aren't my own, when I'm not putting on the event, when I am participating, my strategy is to have one-on-one conversations with people, smaller conversations. I don't actually mind answering a question in front of a group or anything like that, or participating in a discussion, but energetically, what's sustaining for me is the more intimate conversations with people and asking questions and listening and really working on like keeping it real and not having it be some wonky energy around like, I don't know, puffing energy. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. Oh my gosh. I hear you on that one. And I am definitely the person that's okay with listening. And I think a lot of times people are like, don't you have anything to say? I'm like, no, I'm gaining a lot of information right now. That's just how I am.
I think listening is a superpower that many people don't have. And it hurts them, whether it's in a sales conversation or it's in a podcast interview or it's at events or with your family or your clients if you're in a service-based business. I think listening, if you can really tap into learning how to listen. I mean, if it's not your superpower right now, I want you to know that you can become a much better listener. And it doesn't mean making yourself small or diminishing yourself. It's actually empowering yourself, because when you really hear someone, when you really hear what they're saying, not only do they feel heard and better, but you've gained something. You have grown. It will give you the information you need to take the next step in your life, your business, that relationship, whatever it is. So I think it's a real superpower.
I agree.
Okay. So shifting gears again, some of my biggest breakthroughs have been a result of shifting my mindset. It's what I teach, just in full transparency, how critical this is, because mindset is where our thinking is set at, where our mind is set at. And if you want, my value proposition is let's increase your income generation faster than you ever thought possible. In order to do that, your mind has got to be set at a different level of awareness, a different level of behavior, action, opportunity, seeing, all of that. And so we have to change our mindset. So with that as the frame, how significant has mindset been to you, and what shifts have you made since, say, when you first launched your business and now?
Mine even happened in grad school, right? Like I remember, because this is the example I use all the time. I sat in class, probably my first trimester of school, and one of the instructors was like, get rid of all the negative people in your life. And I remember sitting there thinking, what do you do when it's your family? Right?
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Because it wasn't that, I mean, God, if my parents listened to it, but it was just that thought of like, and it wasn't because it was just how they were trained, right? The mother, father, teacher, preacher, on what we were told we can do, we can't do, all of this stuff. And so it was then and there that I was like, I've got to shift this. Like like I'm responsible for me is how it is. So that is that thought process. I'm that person that does the affirmations in the morning, right? Even this morning, I started out with my stuff. I've got my goals. I've got my vision board. I have all of that. And so, even in the last year, like it's been crazy to see what my brick and mortar business and shutdowns and everything else. And I like 100% transparency. There were days that I was like, this sucks, right? Like, and then again, it was like, Lisa, time out. Like, you attract this, like, stop 1 second. You know what I mean? So it is.
So let's pause right there.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the family stuff in a moment, but very timely. You have a brick and mortar business and obviously shut down. How did you manage your mindset around that? And how did you shift your business just in a nutshell? Like, how did you keep the doors, the proverbial doors, not the literal doors open?
Well, we were in, like, thank God I was deemed essential for emergencies only. So, I mean, when I'm a wellness-based practice, that was great. Sarcasm there. You can't see my eyes rolling, but it was that thought. At first I went into a panic. Like when I realized that 2 weeks didn't mean 2 weeks. And I was like, this could be indefinite. This could be a year. And then it was, okay, well, let's go back to the basics. Let's make sure we've got everything covered. And for me as a brick and mortar, I went through and just obviously the physical things that I did, checking overhead, all of those things, making sure the business was still going to be in check, like that type of stuff. But again, focusing in, and even now, like it's hard. It's such a polarizing environment out there. You got to check yourself every couple of minutes when I've got a new person in, just to make sure that I'm cool, calm, and collected. Like that's where I'm at, right? Like whatever's happening here is staying here. I'm not going to outwardly project, whatever off to other people. It's like, hey, this is my stuff today. We're dealing with my stuff here. Like, Lisa, check this at the door. You are now being Dr. Lisa to help love, serve everybody else over here.
Okay. So compartmentalizing
is
what I'm hearing.
Yes.
You got to do it. Okay.
You got to do it.
Okay. Okay, great. And do you want to go back to toxic family? How did you, you're like, really, I really don't want that on the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's just like the negative Nellies, right? It's just how it was. But it was also, I look back at my grandparents were that way. My grandparents lived through the Depression. Of course, they're going to expect the worst, right? Like that's how it was. And so they taught that to their parent or to their children, which are my parents. And so it's so interesting to see like how little seeds that we plant. Like my parents are amazing now. And so they'll even be like, oh, I guess I just realized what I did. I'm like, yeah, you did, So, just, I mean,
I think it's really an important conversation to have, like that mindset that you have to sacrifice, eliminate toxic people in your life, whether it's your best friend sometimes or your parents or your siblings. Is a tough one for people to understand. And there's a lot of nuance to this. I don't think it's sometimes it's just setting clearer boundaries. Sometimes it's being clear about how much time you're spending. Sometimes it really is about removing yourself from the family for a period of time. Yeah. And that is a challenging one for people to hear. And whenever I go there with a client, I go there very sensitively because it's not, you can't do it with a,
sharp knife.
And it doesn't, it's not a one size fits all situation. So it's really important, but you do have to have your eyes open around this, that it's not just the guy in traffic who's got road rage that has a negative toxic energy. Sometimes it's the people we love and the people we've grown up with. So,
and it's some of those friendships. It's one of those things that even just recently, I remember, like I just had a friendship within grad school that, it was just not fitting, right? Like that's the best way to say it. And even with Facebook, it's hard because people still pop into your life. Right. And then they all, again, still want to be besties. And I'm just like, sorry, no. Yeah. And I don't want that comes across as arrogant. Like that's like, I'm only going to but you have to you have to protect yourself. Like you have to, it's the fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, the whole thing. Yeah.
And the other thing that happens there, I think is that you have to have the perspective. Well, you don't have to, you can do anything you want. I have the perspective and I teach the perspective that the universe is happening for you. Yes. That if if someone is hurt by my actions, and quite frankly, I've been hurt by other people's actions, right? Like this is not a unidirectional experience, but so let's say I've been hurt by someone's actions. Let's say they don't want to be friends with me anymore. That hasn't come up, but let's just say, okay. And other things have come up. Okay. But that one hasn't. And if that happens, I have to recognize this is something that's happening for me, not against me.
Yes.
And when I do that, I'm able to learn and grow and become more and use the experience to support my evolution. And I have that as a position that the person might be hurt right now by the experience of me saying, no, I don't want to be your friend anymore, or I don't want to spend a certain amount of time with you. And if they really allow it to work for them, it will be one of the best things in their lives as well.
Yeah.
But you can't control their perspective, but you can control how you think about what's happening for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is. And how you just said that, like the universe is conspiring for us. And I feel like I've had to have that conversation with certain people where it's like the victim mentality. I'm like, everything, like the world's not out for you. Like everything is working for us. It's not against us. So
yeah,
I love
absolutely, 100%. Okay, before I ask you my final questions, where can people find you in the world if they want to learn more about your services and getting help from you and how to help their health, all that stuff?
Dr. Lisa O, DrLisao.com. And then my office, so all like the chiropractic stuff is aspineatatime.com. And then social media, unfortunately, is my whole name. So Dr. Lisa Olszewski. So that would probably be in the show notes.
Yes, there you go. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So what do you do yourself to continue to learn and grow and to stay on the top of your game, whether that's professionally or business development wise? What is your practice?
I have a TV. I do not ever turn on my TV. So I am literally always listening to podcasts, to YouTube, to, BitChute, also whatever, all of the places everything is now. So I am constantly listening to that. I feel like I've been on more virtual online seminars. So I'm always constantly trying to up level and just continue to grow. Where before I used to attend conferences all the time, we can't travel anymore, or I guess all my conferences are now virtual. So I just do those instead. So I can stay at home and not leave.
Fantastic. Okay. Now we're going to go in a different direction. Okay. What do you love most about yourself?
I would say my smile and my laugh. As much as like listening to this audio, you guys might be like, oh,
they might see the video too. We'll see.
Okay. All right. Yeah. But yeah. And then, can I just continue to add? No.
Yes, please. I mean, the reason I put this question forth today was I think that there's I don't know that there's a lack of self-love, but there is a lack of acknowledgement around it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important to acknowledge the love that we have for ourselves. I think it's generative. It gives us energy.
Yeah. And 5 years ago, had you asked me this, I would have been like, nothing, right? Because that's like where most people would be. But it's also, I feel like I have such an innate love for everybody and helping others, but I have to keep that in check, right? Because I've still got to make sure I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So what makes you an unstoppable woman?
Oh my gosh. Like the last answer, like taking care of other people, making sure I'm always striving to be the best version of me possible.
Yeah. So that you can take care of other people.
Yeah. And so I can serve at my best to help everybody else. Because if I'm not full, then it's, can't pour from an empty cup. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Lisa. This has been a great ride. I so appreciate you sharing so many like specific actions people can take, from the essential oils to how you approach, your pre-sleep, protocol and magnesium, to how you eat, and also sharing transparently the struggles that you've gone through and who you were in the past and how you've grown and evolved. Because I think so often we see someone who's a successful female business owner, and we don't know what it took to get there. And it's always important to see that, it's not a perfect journey, and you can do it imperfectly and still, you know, be sexy and beautiful and love your laugh and not have to starve yourself. So there you go.
Right. We can actually eat.
Yes, I'm so pro eating. Can I just tell you, I love to eat. I love food.
Right.
And I think,
Absolutely,
okay,
me too. I'm such a foodie.
and I think women are ravenous. Okay. I'm going to go off a little bit. I'm going to go off on a little rant.
That's
I
fine.
think, women, I think we're ravenous for real substance. Well, whether that's like friendship substance, real connection, real intimacy, whether that's real substance in terms of what we're learning intellectually, our like depth of knowledge about how this world works, real substance in terms of food, like we crave real food, real substance in terms of sex. I think we're ravenous around this stuff. Like, and we're not
Yes.
feeding our minds, our spirits, our bodies, our hearts in a really full and impactful way. And I think we need to feed ourselves. And if there's something that's stopping
Yes.
you from feeding yourself, metaphorically or actually, it's time to look at what's stopping you and become,
Yes.
I'm going to do my thing, become unstoppable, right? Like go for your life, live your big life. Okay. With
Yes.
that,
I love it.
thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. That's a wrap. Hey, thanks so much for joining us and being part of the Unstoppable Woman movement. We have got a ton of free resources for scaling your business at theunstoppablewoman.com/free stuff. And you can find that link in the description below. So go ahead and check those out. And we'd also love your help in getting our message out to more and more women. If you'd be willing to share this video with all the unstoppable women in your life, that would be fantastic. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Reviews, likes, and comments are greatly appreciated. We go in and read them all. So thank you for those. And thanks for listening, and be unstoppable.